What's going on, everybody? Andy Herman back here with another immediate reaction video, breaking down the Packers' two newest players, two players selected in the back end of the fifth round. Offensive lineman out of Duke, Jacob Monk, and safety out of Oregon State, Kitan Oladapo. They did use a late sixth round pick in order to move up in the fifth round to get Jacob Monk. Again, offensive lineman out of Duke. We'll break down the tape in just a moment. And let me just say, first of all, like both of these draft picks, I think you're going to like both of these players as we dig into them a little bit further. But a couple interesting things here. Number one, with Oladapo on the board, and with them taking him in the fifth round, this is their third safety. They took Buller, they took Evan Williams, they now took Oladapo in the fifth round. A lot of times when you've got players on your board that are draftable players, and clearly they liked Oladapo enough to take him in the fifth round despite taking two safeties already, usually that means you're going to be a little bit more patient. They were not patient in the fourth round and moving up for Evan Williams. And I mentioned it in my last video when we talked about Green Bay being aggressive to go up and get Evan Williams and wanting to take him early in the fourth. I'll say it one more time here. Usually, again, if you have two safeties, draftable safeties like this on your board, you're willing to be patient and maybe just wait to see if Evan Williams gets there in the fourth round. They did not wait. They aggressively moved up in the fourth round. This just tells me even more how much they liked Evan Williams and how much they wanted to make sure that they secured his services, even if they did have a Kitan Oladapo on their board later with a draftable grade in the fifth round. So they did not mess around. They went and got their guy. We've also talked about the name of this draft, and that's versatility. Jacob Monk, 5-year starter, right tackle, right guard, and center. He's got double-digit starts at all three of those positions. So he might end up just being a center in the NFL. We'll have to wait and see. I think he at least has some guard versatility, but he's had a ton of versatility in college. Kitan Oladapo played box safety, played post safety. He started his career as a cornerback. He's another one. He might end up more as just a box safety in the NFL. But he's had all of that versatility and experience in college playing different positions. And this is very, very clearly something that Brian Gutekunst values in an incredible amount. And we have seen that come to fruition all throughout the course of this draft. Also, more team captains. Jacob Monk was a team captain. Kitan Oladapo was a team captain. Just team captains littered in this draft. And we have heard for a while now, going back to Ted Thompson, they're going to draft Packer people, how much they value the locker room. They went and got high quality human beings, team captains, leaders, locker room warriors, and weight room guys that are constantly, like, they've got all of these type of guys this weekend. And this is something that Green Bay has valued quite a bit as well. Not just the play on the field, but the culture in that locker room. And whether or not that actually results to winning on Sundays and Mondays, etc., we'll see. But it does sound like they have a very close-knit, super motivated, perfect locker room. Sounds like this was not something that they wanted to take for granted. They added in the offseason two big-time locker room guys in Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs. Now, they lose a huge one in Aaron Jones. That we'll see how that goes. But they add two big-time leaders in Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs, and then just litter the draft with team captains and, again, super locker room guys from all indications with this entire draft class. So versatility, team captains, both things that Brian Gutekunst has been pretty adamant about when adding players to this draft class. Let's start on the offensive line here. Packers get their second offensive lineman, of course, Jordan Morgan in the first round, now Jacob Monk in the fifth. I am a little bit surprised that they haven't attacked that position more aggressively. I thought this could be, and I still think they're going to get more, by the way. They've got 3 picks remaining. I'd be willing to bet one of those is an offensive lineman, but I thought this would maybe be like a first, a third, or a second and a third, like day 2 picks, and then an early day 3, maybe even a late day 3. I thought they could have gone 4 offensive linemen, and again, maybe even earlier. I think this also, because of that, it was really important that they got that Andre Dillard signing. Yes, it's great that Jordan Morgan can play outside. And I'll just be clear here. I'll say it one more time. Andre Dillard is not guaranteed a roster spot. But they, so far, have only got the first rounder and the fifth rounder. That's not nothing. They got the very first pick in the draft as an offensive lineman with incredible versatility. And their fifth rounder might have some of that versatility as well and certainly could compete at center maybe right away with Josh Myers. And if not, maybe be a long-term play there. But I did think they'd be a bit more aggressive, and now it maybe feels like that Andre Dillard signing could even be a little bit more important as they build out the depth of this team on the offensive line after losing David Bakhtiari, and I know he only played one game, but after losing Yash Nyman, after losing John Runyon Jr., there is going to be a transition here with some of the depth on the team. Getting Dillard, getting Jordan Morgan, and now getting Jacob Monk are going to be really big for this team as they do try to rebuild the depth along the offensive line. They also get their third safety in this draft. When Brian Gutekunst recognizes that there is a deficiency at a position, he is not afraid to attack it aggressively. Xavier McKinney, and then, of course, you've got Kitan Oladapo, Evan Williams, and Javon Bullard all in this draft. Those are four players, obviously McKinney free agent signing. Those are all four players that he went and completely reshaped the safety room. 2023, Darnell Savage, Jonathan Owens, Rudy Ford, Anthony Johnson Jr., Dallin Levitt, Zane Anderson. A really tough safety group that, to be fair to that group, I thought overperformed for their talent level. They were mostly fine, not good, not great, sometimes bad, but most of the time you didn't really notice it all that much, which was a huge thing for that safety room because it needed a massive upgrade. But going from that to Xavier McKinney, Javon Bullard, Evan Williams, Kitan Oladapo, Anthony Johnson Jr., and maybe Zane Anderson if he makes it, that is a night and day difference. As I joked yesterday, there is no human measurement known to man that can measure the distance between those two safety groups. It is a massive, massive upgrade, headlined by Xavier McKinney, of course, but getting three different safety types in Bullard, Williams, and Oladapo really going to finish out that depth. And you never know. There's a world in which Bullard's going to be really good. So I don't think there's much question about that. But if you did want to play Bullard in the slot, maybe Evan Williams becomes a starter at safety. Maybe Oladapo becomes a starter at safety. I'm sure Anthony Johnson Jr. is going to do everything to get his name in that conversation, but so much more talent and so much more competition in that room. They completely made over that safety room. Let's talk about Jacob Monk. Quick scouting report here. Watch some of his Clemson tape. Really fun player. He matched up with Peter Woods, who is a defensive tackle for Clemson, who is likely going to be a very highly drafted defensive tackle out of Clemson in a draft or two from now, depending on when he comes out. There are a lot of people that thought that he could have been a high-end draft pick this year if he came out. I don't think he was eligible to yet, but either way, he is a high-end prospect, and Monk beat him on a couple different occasions. It was really fun to watch. He just overpowered him on one play. He's a 5-year starter, as mentioned, team captain, had that versatility starting at center, right guard, and right tackle. He's a high-end athlete. Surprise, surprise. Green Bay targeting another super high-end athlete at the position. He's an attacking offensive lineman, uses great power, and is not afraid to throw some people around and pancake some people. You will see that power displayed on tape. He looks good from a movement ability. He has a couple plays where he's pulling out, and the athleticism shows up. This is not a slow lumbering. He brings a really nice blend of attacking and power with the mobility that you're usually looking for within a Green Bay Packers offensive lineman. Has really good anchor. He's a shorter, stouter player, but with that comes a little bit more of a low center of gravity and that ability to anchor back. He needs that, by the way, and it's a little bit of a skill that he might go to, I think, a little bit too much, and he needs to clean up some of his technique so it's not that the opposing defensive player is getting into him and then he has to just anchor back, but that's something that's going to come with time. He also had the second best 10-yard split of any center at the combine. And what that means, that's the most important, one of the most important numbers, if not the most important number for the offensive lineman, because that shows how quickly you get out of your stance and how quickly you're able to explode up. Offensive linemen aren't running 40 yards more often than not. It's these short bursts. And the ability to get out of your stance, get up quick, and then attack the player and get your hands on them first before they can get their hands on you is super important. And that could be a quote unquote superpower that serves Jacob Monk very well in the NFL. Negatives: smallish size and frame. Another short-armed king. The Green Bay has really gone with the short-arm players. At least they have not let that hold them back in any capacity. So in any future Green Bay draft guides or in any future, prognostications of who Green Bay will take in drafts, if one of the asterisks next to the player is short arms, ignore it because Green Bay does not care, apparently. They took a lot of guys with short arms at a variety of different positions in this draft. He does have 20 penalties in his career, which is quite a few. He may not actually have that legitimate versatility in the NFL. Like I mentioned earlier, he might just be a center. I think he's a center that can probably kick to guard in emergency, but he probably does focus on center more at the NFL level. We talked about hand placement with Jordan Morgan. There's a similar issue here, and I think he needs to do a much better job, especially with short arms, of getting those hands inside. If you have the combination of having short arms with bad hand placement, and we saw this with Jordan Morgan on tape as well, it can very quickly become an issue, and Jacob Monk is going to have to figure out a way to get those hands inside so that longer arm players and just bigger athletes in the NFL don't give him the trouble that some of the college players did at the college level. My fit for him, I think he's a true backup center. If he comes in and is just awesome from day one, maybe he could push Josh Myers a little bit. I don't know how quickly that would come, but you're trying to develop him. I think he's probably that swing interior offensive lineman that can play some guard, can play some center. If Tom does not move long-term to center, so let's say Josh Myers walks next offseason, I do think he could be in the conversation to start at center in 2025. That's probably something that you're trying to develop him into, just to give you more options. If you don't end up in a situation where Tom moves, or you just don't want to move him and you keep Zach Tom at right tackle, maybe Jordan Morgan just beats out Rasheed Walker and Rasheed Walker becomes your swing tackle. You still got Elton Jenkins at left guard. You've got Sean Ryan at right guard. Now maybe you have somebody that could potentially start at center in Jacob Monk without having to move Elton Jenkins, without having to move Zach Tom. That's what they'll try to develop him into, as a potential starting center in 2025. And like I said, I do think he could have some guard versatility as well, at minimum in a pinch on game days if he is up and active on the game day roster. All right, Kitan Oladapo. This is another one of those where if you told me Kitan Oladapo went in the 4th round and Evan Williams went in the 5th, like, it sort of feels a little bit more right. But as I mentioned earlier, clearly Green Bay valued Williams quite a bit. Again, safety out of Oregon State. 6'2", 216, 8.18 relative athletic score, 88.3 grade on 789 snaps by Pro Football Focus this past season, 242 career special team snaps. I immediately, when I started watching him, thought that if they didn't draft anyone else, this was my notes prior to the draft, obviously, but if they got to the 5th round, which is where they drafted him, if they got to the 5th round and they didn't draft another safety yet, this is a player that I thought could come in, you draft him in the 5th, and you sort of use him as a placeholder until maybe you were able to upgrade it at another time. And it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Meaning, I thought he could come in, start right now, and you wouldn't notice it. Would you want something better? Probably. And I think just yes. But it's not catastrophic. Like, I thought he had that ability and thought he could potentially come in and be that guy that could start next to Xavier McKinney. I'll say it one more time, not ideal per se, but like sort of like a Chris Barnes, and Chris Barnes was an undrafted guy. But when Chris Barnes as an undrafted guy had to start for a while, it was like, yeah, this isn't great, but like, we're not losing games because of Chris Barnes. Like, we can sort of get by here. Charlie Peppra. Now, Charlie Peppra was next to Nick Collins, right? But Kitan Oladapo would be next to Xavier McKinney. That's the sort of dynamic I thought that if, again, you didn't address safety in the first 4 rounds and you got somebody like Oladapo in the 5th, you could get by with this and not win games because of it, but not lose games because of it either. And that's how I sort of viewed him. And instead, you drafted 2 safeties in front of Oladapo and now still have him as a depth piece that, in case things happen, if you do have some injuries, or maybe you need to use Bullard in the slot, maybe Evan Williams doesn't work out, you still have that guy that I think could come in and play some legitimate safety without like losing the game because of him. And that might not sound sexy, but that is an important thing to have, especially for somebody who could come in and be that depth safety right away. He's a little stiff-hipped, if not very stiff-hipped. I think he's going to ultimately have to be a box safety only. I don't think he's going to have quite that versatility that maybe we would hope he would have, but I think he can be a good box safety. He's going to struggle to change directions and keep pace in the open field. Although he did have one play where he chased down from behind and forced a fumble that was beautiful. So he did display some of that long speed, and with that bigger frame, that's something that hopefully continues to show up on tape moving forward. too many missed tackles. Looks the part of a box safety. There are things on tape that make you want to take a chance. Just some of the upside stuff and the versatility and the speed, like it shows up on tape. So you continue to, even though he was making some mistakes from time to time, you kept kind of wanting to be like, yeah, but I still kind of like him. I can still kind of make excuses around some of these things that he's doing. And again, this was my notes on him prior to the draft. So I'm not rose tinted glasses and looking at him in a different lens now. This was even beforehand. I'm like, I still kind of like this guy, even though there's a couple things that I'm a little worried about. I like the way that he plays the game. Very good blitzer, team captain, previously played cornerback. He did lack some explosive traits on tape. I didn't think there was anything like you watch Edgerrin Cooper and it's like, bam, he's like exploding to places. I didn't think Oladapo had that. It's more of like he's taking good angles, he's getting to his spots, but you don't see some of that explosiveness on tape. 24 this year, so he's a little bit older aged, and he's probably going to have to really be another core special teamer, but he only had a couple hundred snaps on special teams in his entire career, which was longer, and only 242 of those snaps. So he does project as a core special teamer, but you almost would have liked to see a little bit more of it in college. I thought he was going to be somewhere between the 5th and 7th round. When I, again, scouted him ahead of time, he goes in the 5th round here to Green Bay. This is the Packers type of safety that, again, in the maybe Ted Thompson era, they don't address it with Xavier McKinney and they take him in the 5th round and just say, yeah, that guy can go out and do it. And he plays for 3 years and you're like, this is fine, I guess. If he has to be right now your starting safety, you're probably wanting a little bit more, but a depth piece at safety that has starting upside, special teams prowess, projects as a core special teamer, and is a really good depth piece in a completely made over safety room, that's what I can get on board with in the 5th round. And again, I do think he has legitimate starting upside if he can continue to progress as a safety in the NFL. Really like both picks. I think it was a really strong 5th round overall for Brian Gutekunst. I would like to see Green Bay keep attacking offensive line through the remainder of this draft. They have 3 picks left as of right now, 202, 245, and 255. They did trade a couple away, remember, moving up in the 4th and moving up in the 5th, but should be a exciting remainder of the draft. I'll be back here at the end of the draft in the 7th round to break down everything after the 7th round, and then I'll go live for a members only Q&A after that. I will talk to you guys soon. Enjoy the 6th and 7th rounds, and go Pack Go in the meantime.